So I'd like to thank you, and we're going to move right now to what will be the wrap-up of this fifth Caribbean Internet Policy Forum. We really had two wonderful days of very, how should I say this? Very instructive conversations and deliberations as to what we need to think about in addressing digital transformation. On the one hand, that was the focal point of day one's roundtable discussions. And then today, when we address the security concerns, because it would be rather foolhardy to think about digital transformation without significantly looking at the environment in which we're in, the need to safeguard those investments in digital transformation, and the need to think about the future. The pandemic has been both a blessing and a curse when it comes to the use of digital technologies. We have suddenly an exponential amount of technology usage, but we also have at the same time a huge increase of our cyber risks portfolio that we have to consider. And one of the things I think that's also recurrent in both days' discussion is that these issues, the approach to them are always going to be multi-sectorial. It will always require multi-stakeholder approaches from various stakeholders who are responsible for various aspects of what we want to see in terms of our digital future. You can think about in day one when we spoke about the developers, the young people who are actually coming up with very innovative things, and then being given an opportunity to innovate on behalf of the public sector. That's something I think was very useful. The program that Dr. Charles spoke about with a more innovative approach to multiple disciplines, so that graduates don't have to come in at an entry level when it comes to the workplace, or rather at a mid-level, and they can make interventions from there. For today's security focus with our first speaker, Mr. Daniel Ackerman. Daniel really unpacked what would have been some key concerns for us here within the hemisphere. Not just the definition of the substantive criminal laws, but he also spoke about the need for further capacity building, the need for enhanced cooperation. And one of the messages that he mentioned here a couple of times, the need for law enforcement to do a bit of outreach when it comes to cyber crimes and cyber criminality, the risk factor, the reputation factor really spins that issue on its head when it comes to victims of cybercrime not willing to come forward and express that they have been a victim and not getting the appropriate level of redress that is required. Today as well, with the first roundtable, I would say that we had a very useful amount of inputs from our three experts. Sean Osepa from the Internet Society, Carrie-Ann Barrett from OAS CDT, and Sean Fouché from the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago. I would say collectively that they broke down the pillars of what their institutions focus on in conducting effective cybersecurity. And it was evident, they also addressed the issue of evident and inherent risks to not investing properly in cybersecurity. Practices that are required across all institutions to identify and mitigate cyber risk. Some of the lessons learned from that first panel would have looked at developing greater trust communities or safe spaces for companies, for digital players to be able to really unpack and to meet that issue of reputation, of the fear of not wanting to come forward. Shernan gave a wonderful analogy of a CISA being like a fire brigade. That's while you may need to focus on fire brigade, you ideally would not want to see the fire brigade, and therefore there needs to be a great thrust on what will be securing infrastructure beforehand. And then our panel just now with Rishi giving us a bit of the imperatives behind data protection and how that has shifted in today's digital world. The idea of devices being always on and always listening, and the idea that we as users, we're becoming more aware of the data that we are divulging unknowingly, and the initiatives are happening to really safeguard our personal data. Personal data is no longer the traditional PII, personal identifying information that we had in our mind, but using new standards like the GDPR, it could be anything that can be used to identify who we are. And Raquel giving us the pre, during, and post deliberation or debate around the Marco survey has been also very, very useful for all of us to understand in how we come up with effective and appropriate enabling policies and legislations for our Caribbean digital space. I have spoken a lot. I'd like to thank you all for your attendance with us over the last 2 days. But I'd like to also, at this point in time, hand over to one of the co-organizers, Mr. Nigel Cassimire, who will also share some of his closing remarks.
Yes, thank you very much, Kevon. You've covered most of it, I think. I believe over the past 2 sessions, 2 days last week and today, we've examined, several different aspects of the theme of advancing Caribbean digital development, government, private sector, cybersecurity in particular today. I definitely took note of the featured speakers' 3 takeaways, the legal aspects, capacity building aspects, and the collaboration with industry. And from the other panel as well, I took two specific notes. One, it was identified we should have, each organization should have someone in charge of cybersecurity who would see that as his or her responsibility, and also the importance of doing impact assessments of these digitalization projects. So I'll just add those thoughts to what you would have said prior. Oh, and this last panel as well, the information about the Marco Civil, I think, was quite useful. It seems sensible, I think, especially from the point of view of technology independence and so on, to have a statement of basic principles that we want to achieve or protect, as the case might be, when we are creating our legislation and applying technology to solve problems. So it would be useful, I think, as a general practice for all our Caribbean territories that are seeking to implement data protection laws, to have some background statements of principle, which can be used to evaluate the proposals, the legal proposals and provisions that are being put forward for acceptance. There is one aspect I would, in the vein of Caribbean digital development, that I would want to mention again, and it was one of our roundtables on the first day, is the fact that next week in Rwanda, the ITU begins its World Telecommunications Development Conference, where the nations of the world would send their representatives to basically formulate development proposals for ICT. This particular WTDC, though, also has a special element which they call Partner to Connect, which puts into practice the principle mentioned by our featured speaker today about collaboration with industry. The International Telecommunication Union, in fact, has invited its sector members and any other interested industrial stakeholders to come to this particular conference. There's going to be a 2 or 3 day session during the 2 weeks of the conference, which looks at developing collaborative mechanisms between industry, government, and even civil society for ICT development in individual countries. And governments, industry practitioners, civil society members would have the donor agencies would have the opportunity to pledge assistance, whether it's financial expertise, as the case might be, towards specific developmental projects in the developing world. So you're invited to follow the proceedings of the WTDC as well, and in particular that partner to connect. There is the opportunity to follow a lot of what's going on online. So I would invite you to watch the ITU website just to see what's going on in that respect. As we leave this particular forum today, as far as CCTU looking forward, just to let you know that our next big event would be late August, which would be our annual Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. So you can for that within the next month or so. So with that, I think, Kevon, that our third lost connection. So I think we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.